It's all you, Mr. President.
So, well, welcome back from exec and welcome to this is our first real virtual online meeting, so bear with us, but we're going to go through our agenda as we typically do. We're back from exec. Sean, do you want to, and I think we just want to look at, are there any further modifications to the agenda, Sean? Are we all set now, basically?
My apologies, can you hear me? Am I muted?
I can hear you, Sean.
There may be one addition to the agenda. I don't know if it was added previously, but I want to make sure we also speak to it. And that was item 9.4, a resolution to change the number of instructional days.
Right, I've got it 9.3. That's the resolution regarding the academic calendar, correct?
Correct.
Right, so that's on the agenda. That's public. Yep.
Great.
Good. All right. So sounds like we'll go with the agenda that we have. We can always talk about topics as they come up, but that's the basis of it. And really, Sean, now we're looking at public comment period. Are we going to do some of that, or?
We are. Folks, please again bear with us as we try to work out the technology. Zoom allows people to, one, either raise your hand or give a thumbs up or say yes. If you click on that and I see that, we will give folks the 3 minutes that's allotted. We'll have public comments for roughly 30 minutes. Prior to that happening, we did receive 2 public comments that were mailed to our board clerk, and we actively encourage any and all community members to reach out to our board clerk for public comments, or please feel free to contact individual board members. And one of our public comments comes from Amy Bacon, which is asking whether or not ICSD will be closing the playgrounds as the city has done. And another one of our public comments comes from Auburn Seidel, who is talking about whether or not we will speak to distance learning plan for first grade and kindergarten. And so I want to make sure those are on record. I hope you have those and we can proceed from there. If anyone else would like to speak, if you use one of the features in Zoom, please do so, and then I will do my best to unmute you and make sure that you have time to speak.
I'm hearing birds again, Sean. Elder.
You're not hearing them from me. They're most likely, I don't know who they're from.
Well,
I'm actually, no, I'm outside. I've removed myself completely from the bird cage.
Okay, all right.
We do have someone who's wanting to speak, Steve Manley. I'm going to unmute Steve and give him 3 minutes. I would ask all other board members, if you're not speaking, or all other hosts, to put your Zoom on mute if you're not speaking.
Hi, good evening. This is Steve Manley. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Steve.
Fantastic. To begin, I want to thank you all for this opportunity to speak with you this evening and for doing your best to host an open forum, even in the current situation. In the interest of full transparency, I am the executive director of IPEI, but I'm here tonight as a parent of a student at BJM. And my thoughts tonight do not reflect IPEI's actions, even as we think about how best to support our teachers and students moving forward. I want to begin by thanking the district and school leadership for their immediate focus on the food needs of ICSD students and families. As this potential shutdown approached, that was my chief concern for families. I'm extremely happy with the dedication, the decision, and the work that has gone into and behind getting our students and their families food and access to food since day one of what is a constantly changing environment. So a shout out to the bus drivers, a shout out to our cafeteria and food service staff. They've done amazing work, and to the leadership that's kept that organized. I earlier sent a note, and I apologize if it didn't make it to you, to share that I've been less impressed in general with the instructional side of things. Some of my concerns were specifically addressed in the version 2.0 plan that was just released in the last hour or so of distance learning. They had to do with the amount of time and the amount of interaction our children could have with their teacher. I know that my daughter's first grade class experience has been dramatically interrupted, and her teacher has worked really hard in the last 5 months to create a community at BJM and in her classroom. And the impression I was initially given was that she was concerned that she could not reach out to individual students or to groups because it would be unequitable and could potentially be viewed as unfair to students without access. And I wanted to share that with you because what I'm hearing in the community and what I'm experiencing with my own in-laws and cousins is some teachers saying they cannot reach out due to equity issues, and other teachers have already called home at least once, if not more than once, in this time to check in with their students. Some going as far as to hold classroom meetings for those who could attend, but there appears to be, in my experience and what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing, a disconnect and a confusion about the expectations on responsibilities for our teachers. And I do want to share that there are wildly differing views on these teacher expectations, ranging from praising teachers who are calling home to check in, to individuals sharing in person and online that the ITA's contract does not require teachers to work at all during times like this, comparing it to emergency closures during snowstorms, and stating that therefore we should not expect them to violate their contract. I think it's important that this group hear that those conversations are happening. I am grateful for the work that's gone into the distance learning 2.0 plan and look forward to the increased contact my child will have with her teacher, and hopefully, if we move forward, with her extended community. I know that you received a note from Auburn as well, and I know you'll speak to devices, and we both noticed and say thank you to the work and thought that'll go into getting access to our students. That is an equity issue. I know it's a focus of this group and of the district's leadership and of the school's unique leaderships. I just personally believe that equity issues should not result in teachers feeling that they can't reach out to their students. And I have heard about this and experienced it myself. I wanted to share that with you tonight. Thank you for this time.
Thank you, Steve. I'm going to mute. Appreciate that. Next, we have Liz. Liz, if you could do us a favor when I unmute you to say your full name to make sure that we can capture it in the minutes and the transcript that we're required to keep. Liz, are you there?
I'm here. It's Liz Quadrosi. You know me. Hi. I actually I know I'm always there when there's a problem, so I really just wanted to let you know that I so appreciate the work that so many people are doing to make this, Lexi, turn that down, please. Sorry. To make this right by all of our students. I actually was initially apprehensive, thinking we're not moving fast enough, because you know me, I dive in without thinking. And I appreciate, upon some reflection, the fact that we're really taking the time to think about doing this right. So I just wanted to acknowledge all the people who are listening, Lily and Dr. Brown and Mary Grover and all the administrators at the building level who are really putting in the work to try to figure this crazy thing out. I do agree with Steve that some of my colleagues have said, I can't believe you're video chatting. We haven't been given permission. Well, my personality is to do it first and ask for forgiveness later. So it would be helpful if some of the communications we got were a little bit more specific, because people are just really unclear about what's expected. We are, teaching is relationships first. So the first thing we have to do is make sure our relationships with our kids are okay. And teachers need to know that that's not just okay, but expected of them. But mostly I just wanted to say thank you.
Thanks, Liz.
My apologies, if there's anyone else that would like to speak, either find a way to use the raise your hand feature or click yes or some sort of indication, and I will make sure that I find you and give you access. Rob, we may want to wait a minute. I'm not seeing anyone at this point in time. Again, we realize that this is new technology and it's going to take us a while, one, to find an equitable way to make this happen, as well as to hear from folks. And again, I want to encourage our community members to send comments to our board clerk or to reach out to individual board members. So Rob, without seeing anybody else, I think we can proceed with the rest of the agenda.
Right, and Sean, do you, board responses at this time? Do we want to address the basic questions as we get into the discussions regarding instruction, et cetera, and in the agenda item, or do we want board responses now?
I think it's probably appropriate for us to allow board responses. Board members can mute and unmute themselves. Also remember that the COVID district response is the first agenda item as well. And so just to give board members notice about that.
But feel free to respond.
Hi, this is Moira Lang. I just want to thank the folks who wrote in to our board clerk, and also Steve and Liz for speaking up. You know, we certainly appreciate that you've complimented what you think has gone well, and it's important for us to hear what you're concerned about, and we certainly are going to be addressing these issues.
Anyone else for now? Okay, well, you know, we'll certainly have an opportunity to discuss in just a few minutes. And we just want to go to the consent agenda, consideration of counts, and the items that we see. And go ahead.
I'll move the consent agenda. To Moira.
Thanks, Moira.
This is Chris. I'll second.
Thank you, Chris, as always. So move seconded. There's just a few items there. Resolution to accept a letter of recommendation for door security and temperature controls, part of the various contracts that we have. Then it's really, the rest of it is as you see. Chris, anything to add?
No, I don't have anything to add. Sean spoke to the changes on 9.3. I think that's it for right now.
Okay, good. So it's moved, seconded, and I guess we'll go down the list. I vote yes.
Erin Croyle voting yes.
Pat Wasloo voting yes.
Moira Lang voting yes.
Nicole LaFave voting yes.
Chris Malcolm voting yes.
Elgin Harris voting yes.
Sean Eversley Bradwell voting yes.
Excellent. Moved, seconded, and passed. That's everyone.
Did we hear from Ann? Did we hear from Ann?
Oh,
right.
That's
Is she
right.
having new problems?
New problems, yes. So I have eight votes so far.
My apologies. Let me just see. Ann, is this you? Can we hear you?
Didn't want to forget Ann. I was just.
Oh, now I'm good. I vote in favor.
Very
Thanks.
good. All right, Ann. Thank you. Glad we don't have any more than 9 board members. That's makes this hard. So very good. So that's moved, seconded, and on to Dr. Brown, Superintendent's report, and very happy to hear from you tonight.
Okay. No, thank you for unmuting me, Dr. Bradwell. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, Mr. Ainsley and Mr. Bradwell. We have much to share tonight, so I'll save a lot of my time for the items on the agenda, but take this opportunity to thank our community for being a community. We've written several letters over the last couple of weeks, speaking to our efforts to address this pandemic and crisis and the closure of our buildings. And I just want to thank folks for their patience and trust as we've navigated this very carefully and thoughtfully. And we will be talking about our plans to date and our plans going forward a little later. So thank you for your support in that regard. And most importantly, thank you for your support of me the last week or so. Many of the folks I see on the call tonight know that my family experienced a significant tragedy, one that was very jarring. And the notes, the emails, the cards, the food that I've received, my family's received, not only here in Ithaca, but in Virginia, has been appreciated. And I can't thank you enough for the love that you've shown us, not just the last week, but the last 10 years. So thank you for your support. And thank you, Mr. Ainsley and Mr. Bradwell, for this opportunity to speak. And we look forward to sharing some more additional information with you in a bit.
Oh, that's great, Dr. Brown, and certainly our condolences. But certainly glad to have you back.
Yeah.
And so let's, Dr. Brown, let's just roll right into it and bring your team on as we're going to talk about the district response to COVID-19.
All right, and I have Ms. Talk is going to join me here, and some other folks going to be chiming in also. And before we get into some details, and again, we've shared some information out with our community a little over an hour ago, I just want to frame our approaches and why we are in this space. Now more than ever, it's important for us as a community, as a school district, as an organization, to focus on who we're going to be versus what we do. You've heard me talk about that often. We could do a lot of stuff. That's an academic journey, but focusing on who we're going to be is the authentic one. And we've said all along that we are going to be a loving community and a loving organization. And that commitment, that kindness, that selflessness, we've seen that on display throughout our community and in our organization and in our approaches to developing a response to this pandemic and our ICSD distance learning plan 1.0 and 2.0. First and foremost, we've been wanting to ensure the health and safety of our young people and our families. We've heard from hundreds of folks in our community who've wanted us to be thoughtful and practical and supportive of them as they've been navigating these challenging waters. I mean, there's food insecurities, folks are losing jobs, folks are not knowing what's going to happen with childcare. Quite frankly, they did not want to hear from us 24, 48 hours after we closed our buildings about what worksheets we're going to deliver and what we're asking them to do at their kitchen tables. So we've had to be mindful of that. We are an organization that has always been very collaborative. There's nothing, I can't think of things that we've said from my seat, the board seat, that's been a top-down edict. Everything we've done, the work that we've been a part of has been in a collaboration with our outstanding educators. What we've done and what we plan to do with distance learning is going to be no different. We aren't like some of the districts I'm reading about and seeing all over the country who, 24 hours after closing their buildings, the central office sent out a bunch of worksheets and said to educators, this is what we need you to do. And they're getting spotty implementations and not a lot of buy-in or engagement from the educators who are attempting to do so. We've sat down, and it was spoken to in our public comment, we sat down and we built this out very thoughtfully and carefully with our amazing educators in a very collaborative way. That's now we can say is going to be of quality. Our anti-marginalization work, our case study work, our social emotional learning work, the work that we've been a part of building for 10 years could not be changed overnight. It couldn't be changed in a couple of weeks. Quite frankly, it can't be changed in a couple of months. We're doing our best to transition to a different instructional delivery as best we can, where we can ensure that it's going to be of quality and it's going to be equitable and inclusive and culturally responsive. So for the folks who are out there wishing for us to move faster, I understand. I would like for this to move faster, but I will caution you, we are always going to move very thoughtfully and carefully. And we're going to be doing that in collaboration with our outstanding educators. And that takes time. This is not going to be a Band-Aid for us. This is going to be an opportunity to be innovative and redesign learning, which is where school districts, not just here, but across our country, are finding ourselves in. So with that, I'm looking forward to Lily sharing some things about where we are currently, what we've done over the past couple of weeks, and what we plan to do going forward. Ms. Talkia.
Thanks, Dr. Brown. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening and for inviting me here as well. So Dr. Brown indicated really we wanted to begin with the health and safety of our community. And so I'll talk a little bit about the very important work of ensuring that our children are fed throughout our community, and then we'll transition to Carrie Burke, our coordinator of health and wellness, who will talk a little bit about some other health and safety issues throughout our school district and community. So in terms of meals, our fantastic food service and transportation folks have come together and created an incredible operation where Monday through Friday, we're delivering around 2,700 meals every day. So we're doing 686 deliveries. That's what we did today. And we're providing breakfast and lunch to each of these families every day. Our food service folks come in very early. They're following a series of safety precautions, and we're ensuring their health and safety as they are providing for our young people as well. And so we thank them for all of the work that they're doing, loading these onto our buses. Thank you to our transportation folks who are then dropping these off at folks' doorsteps throughout our community. We can't thank them enough, and we really appreciate all the work that they've been doing. It's really been exceptional, and folks worked all that whole first weekend in order to make it happen. And for anyone who's listening and who may not know about our meal delivery, again, these are all free for children, and there's a meal delivery form that can be found on our website, and or folks can just call 211 directly in order to place those orders. I'm going to transition to Carrie. Carrie, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little more about other health and safety issues, and then we'll transition into more about distance learning.
We may need to let Carrie into the...
Right. I went to try to click on Carrie, and Carrie disappeared. And so...
She's raised her hand again. Let's see here.
Oh, that's what happened. So there you go. Fantastic. Sorry. Thank you, Carrie. Appreciate it.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. So a few quick updates. Everyone has access to the information that's provided by the County Health Department. As of this evening, there are just over 1,400 persons who've been tested for COVID-19, and about 1,100 of those have come back negative. And to date, there are currently 76 confirmed cases in the county, with one person hospitalized. This is in line with where testing is across the state. This reflects about 1% of our population here in the county who've been tested. I want to take a moment to highlight the efforts of our ICSD school nurses. In the last week, they have been involved with volunteer efforts with the Tompkins County Health Department, assisting them with remote monitoring of persons who are currently isolated. Additionally, they've been involved with mask making efforts at Bartels Hall at Cornell University. These activities were highlighted on our social media feed, and if you have a chance to check them out, there's some great images. Additionally, with respect to health, there's been growing, increasing conversations and emphasis on mental health during this time period. Last week, Mary Grover, Sheila McHenry, and I coordinated a call with area providers, including Family and Children's Services, Tompkins County Mental Health, Northeast Pediatrics, Cayuga Medical Center Psychiatric Unit, RACR, and the Lighthouse Possibilities Program to understand how entities were organizing and providing services, what their access was or is, whether or not they're receiving referrals and how those referrals are being received, and discussions of their experience to date with providing services in this fashion, in most cases remotely. We compiled that information and then disseminated it to our student services staff consisting of school counselors, social workers, and school psychologists, so that if they encounter families who rely on these services or need access to them, they can support them in gaining access. Additionally, we are launching internal work group focused on mental health and social emotional learning. And the leaders of that particular group, the facilitators, had a conversation earlier today, and Thursday will be engaging the work group. We are hoping to support our staff as they engage with students and families in the provision of either counseling that is required through or their 504 IEP plan, and broader social emotional support. And finally, a topic that has been brought to our attention by community members and highlighted by activities through the City of Ithaca is the use of our physical spaces, our facilities, our athletic facilities, and our playgrounds. So what we appreciate is that as a school district, our facilities are essential resources for health and wellness, and we understand that people have questions and concerns about visiting them during this time. And we also appreciate the resource that they represent to our community in terms of providing a recreation, a connection to the outdoors and green space and opportunities for physical activity. I think what we believe is that many of our open spaces can continue to be used in a safe manner, allowing people to enjoy both the physical and the mental health benefits. But we do share concerns about the use of playgrounds and play structures, in part because it's difficult to do social distancing, and there's some evidence about the virus surviving on surfaces for more than a few hours. The City of Ithaca has taken steps to restrict access to playgrounds. They have posted signage and used caution tape to encircle spaces to indicate that they should not be utilized. So I would submit for the board's consideration that we engage in a similar approach here, where we provide messaging and advisory both through our social media channels and also at the physical site, as well as clearly denoting or marking those spaces or elements, particularly the play structures and playground equipment, that we would like persons to refrain from using. Those are all my updates at this time.
Thanks, Carrie.
So Lily, you wish to provide a few additional details, and then we can entertain some board questions about some of the things we're sharing.
Absolutely. ICSD Distance Learning 2.0, we put out, Dr. Brown put out an excellent letter to the community, giving the overview of our plan that we've collaboratively developed with our union leadership. I also want to thank our union leadership for really being true partners with us in designing this plan. There are a number of teachers and ESPs and principals and directors who really helped us craft this and make this work. So essentially our three main goals are to provide truly engaging and empowering academic distance learning experience for our students, also to provide supports in terms of social and emotional learning and growth, and also to ensure there's a level of flexibility so that our educators themselves can be sure to manage their own lives, knowing that this is a really challenging time for everyone. So the plan itself is going to include a combination of synchronous or at the same time together and asynchronous or done anytime assignments and connections with educators in a series of ways. So in the younger grades, we're going to continue to really focus on physical materials, things like books and projects, etc. And from grades 2 and up, we'll focus primarily on digital platforms. So using our one-to-one initiative that the board has been wonderfully supportive of, we'll be leveraging those tools in order to support student learning. That student contact at the elementary grades, so pre-K through 5, would be daily. It might be a classroom teacher, it might be a specialist teacher or a TA or an aide, but at each day, students would receive some kind of contact. And then at the secondary level, grades 6 through 12, students would be engaging in either direct lessons or office hours at least 2 times a week. We know that modes of student contact are really important, so we're really running the gamut here, everything from the plain old phone to things like district email and digital platforms like Seesaw and using the Google Suite, things like Hangouts and Google Meet as well. The amount of time during a given day that students might be engaged in actual learning activities, pardon me, and contact with staff would be different based on students' ages. And you know, we've done some research about this, and we also know that at the higher ends there are a number of students who may be taking multiple AP exams toward the end of the year, and so we wanted to be responsive in terms of those ranges. Ultimately, you know, if we had to sum this up in just a few sentences, this plan for ICSD's distance learning 2.0 version, right, is really more about establishing regular academic and social emotional supports and ensuring that teachers are working and educators are working together in order to support each other and manage their own lives as they're moving forward. There's certainly a lot of details that we're working through, and we have about 200 educators, clerical, ESPs, teachers, principals, directors, who are participating in a series of working groups. That's an incredible showing from our community, from our staff, who are volunteering their time to really flesh out each one of these plans in particular areas as well. And so we've been grateful for their support as well, and they're really engaging in thoughtful dialogue and making excellent recommendations around how to make this work best for our kids, for our community, and frankly, for our colleagues. There are certainly questions about technology, of course, and we've been working hard to ensure that our students have what they need. So right now for 6 through 12, with our current iteration of distance learning, all lingering student tickets are out for delivery. So everything from Chromebooks to chargers, et cetera. They're, you know, when we're talking about a large number of devices, kids may not always remember exactly where they are. So we're even, you know, going through lockers and finding kids' items and making sure that they're getting there to them. We ordered hotspots prior to the crisis. There is now a nationwide shortage. They did not they weren't able to give us all of those, but those arrived this afternoon. So the number that we have is pretty good, and we have a solid handle on the number of kiddos who need hotspots or need access now. So there's a hybrid approach certainly to just pointing out we're also in contact with a number of internet providers, and particularly some of our rural areas. And we've also reached out to every single student at the secondary level, some multiple times and multiple modes, and are just ensuring that we have the most accurate and up-to-date data for where our kids are in terms of their internet access or their device access, because we know that over the past couple of weeks, some things have changed, frankly, and some situations for our students have changed. And so we've wanted to follow up with them individually and also remind them of our meal delivery service as well. That's some of where we are. I'm sure you have lots of questions, and I know Dr. Brown may want to add a few things in there as well.
No, thank you, Lily. That was very well done, and I appreciate you sharing. And thank you, Carrie, for the information you shared. So now we would love to hear the questions that the board has, and also seek direction on a couple of the things that Carrie brought up, particularly when it comes to what we shall do with our playgrounds, basketball courts, etc. So we're here to answer any questions and seek some direction on some things.
Thanks, Dr. Brown. I'll just lead off. Vision for the office hours, what will that look like in practice?
Lily, you want to take a second? Did you hear that?
Yes, thank you. Yep.
Okay, go for it.
Office hours at the secondary may look like a period of 45 minutes, for example, where an educator would be on Google Hangout and would be just available in order to have students pop in, ask a quick question about a particular assignment, and then they can hop back off. So it's not a time that they necessarily would be doing a formal lesson, but it would be a time for kids to essentially stop by and check in and gather some additional information, maybe receive some additional guidance, either in small groups or larger groups, or perhaps even individually, depending on how many students hop on.
Right, and that would be a certain time of day. Would students just, send a question to the office hours and then get a response later? Just wondering.
They'll be set for standard time. So part of the work of these groups of educators who are coming together and collaborating around the logistics and really making sure that this comes to life for our kids,
right,
is to establish some of these schedules and logistics in order to make it happen.
Sure.
Hi, it's Moira. Following up on that, I'm thinking about scheduling and timing. So for instance, say there are multiple children in a household, and how is that going to work in a family if the contact is by phone, or and they're sharing that phone, and then also the high school students or middle and high school students with multiple courses, how is the workload and the scheduling going to be coordinated?
We have our high school, for example, broken up into a couple of different work groups in order to address just that. Everything from, we're ensuring that there's special ed representation on each of those working groups as well, because I didn't actually talk at length about special education and teletherapies. And Mary Grover is also on the call. It'd be great to hear from her if you have any questions about that. But we have working groups divided into some different sections. We also have administrators that are helping to facilitate those working groups. And on each of those, actually at the high school, there are folks who are, I would say, experts in scheduling and have extensive experience with with these as well. In some ways, Moira, it can be helpful to utilize the current master schedule and go from there because it's a truncated version of a given day, right? And students don't have to access those office hours. We at least have foundation laid, right, for a potential schedule that then we can pull from and shift from there. We are mindful of the amount of work that students may have to engage in, and we also know that there are students who have very different levels and types of supports within their community or within their homes, right? And everybody has a different circumstance. There may be older students, as we talk about on our website and our FAQ, who are caring for younger children. When we're talking about younger children, again, if they're being cared for by an older sibling, that presents a series of challenges, if we're providing a lot of independent work. So we've really tried to be mindful about the type and the amount of assignments that we're providing.
Hi, folks. This is Eldred. If nobody else is going to jump in, I have a couple of questions. One is in regards to the building leaders. Lily, we know we have some excellent leaders. We know some of our kids have some incredible relationships with our building leaders, as well as families. How does this plan leverage our leaders? What's their role in this at the moment?
Our building leaders are working, I would say, quite a bit more, trying to coordinate this and support this. Everything from right now at the elementary level, actually making copies and stuffing envelopes to ensure that our kids have learning packets now, to supporting professional development, to supporting teachers to ensure that they're up and running on Google Classroom, to reaching out directly to families and ensuring that they have everything that they need. As part of this plan, we've collaborated well, I think, with our union leadership. One of the parts of our plan that we shared with staff was, that administrators would have access to things like Seesaw and Google Classroom in order to provide support, potentially guidance, et cetera. So Eldred, in a lot of ways, it mirrors the ways in which we, although I'm not a building leader anymore, the way that I was as a building leader, stopping in, checking in, helping out, and then continuing to lead staff meetings and professional development, communicating with families, et cetera. Am I making sense? Did I answer your question?
Absolutely. I was going to suggest that if they probably don't have time to do everything you even listed, but they might want to consider holding some office hours themselves, because I remember being in your building, there are some kids who probably weren't going to be able to make it through the day. Let's say saw Lily, let's say saw their principal. So that's just a thought. My second question is about the delivery of curricular-based performance arts and visual arts and the incredible music offerings that our kids were experiencing. Are they included in the plan as a measure of SOP, standard operation procedure, or is there something different that we've had to do to incorporate those babies?
There's a few things here. I'll start with a story, if you wouldn't mind.
I love stories.
A few days into, great. And so that first week that we were closed down and we were all, I think as a community and as a broader nation, we're all looking around thinking, oh my goodness, what's happening? I got an email from a parent of a high school student in a music class wanting to let me know how grateful they were that their child was able to continue to learn from their choral teacher. The choral teacher had immediately set up interactive meetings, and students were continuing to learn over these first few days as we were moving forward. So I tell you that because there are possibilities. There are things that are already happening that our fine and performing arts teachers are doing, and their creativity is not limited by brick and mortar buildings. They're certainly finding ways to connect, and I know we'll continue to. There are a number of working groups throughout our throughout the the working group structure that address things like elementary art, upper level art, band and orchestra, choir, general music, etc.
Thank you.
Hi, Lily. It's Ann. I just have two questions. One is a follow-up to Eldred's in terms of building leaders, but one is about instructional coaches and what role they're playing in this. And the second is about secondary level and grades. And is there any thought of going pass-fail or giving a pass-fail option for our secondary students?
Thanks. So let's see, remind me of your first question. I'm now just immediately answering the second one, but I want to go in order.
Well, the first one was about instructional coaches that we have.
Yes, thank you. Great. Yep.
And master educators.
Yes, excellent. So both our master educators of inclusion and our instructional coaches have been busy providing professional development and coordination. We very quickly were able to, thanks to the great work of our instructional coaches for equity, inclusion, and innovation, create a distance learning professional development website that is a hub for all synchronous and asynchronous professional development. It also has signups for things like office hours and one-on-one coaching sessions. So folks can really learn how to set up their classroom in Seesaw. It's already set up, you just need to sign in. But so those folks have been busy at work creating those, and also then crafting a next level of professional development for ICSD distance learning 2.0. So they know they themselves have bof ensuring that they're in a space where they can then deliver that professional development and really feel like they have a very solid understanding of all of the complexities associated with some of these online learning tools, to ensure that we're really thinking about learning as opposed to just using cool tools, right? And focusing in on having students create, right, to analyze, to synthesize, and craft products that demonstrate learning as opposed to just being passive. Passive receivers of information. They're also working on, and our working groups are focused in on culturally responsive distance learning. Right? We've had these three key levers of inclusion, cultural responsiveness, and innovation, and we don't want those to suddenly disappear because we're not in the same spaces as one another. And so our team is also focusing in on doing research and also just identifying and creating some best practices around that. Our master educators of inclusion have also been meeting with our wonderful providers, and so special ed teachers and OTs, speech language pathologists, social workers, and others, psychologists, in order to provide support and also help with the great guidance of Mary Grover and Sheila McHenry, what this can really look like and moving forward. And so they've been instrumental as well. And then lastly, there has been discussion about grades and some possible ways forward. Many folks in our region have made a decision to transition to combining third and fourth quarter grades, as opposed to simply having a third quarter and fourth quarter. So that will be true for elementary all the way to secondary. And there certainly has been discussion of pass-fail, and right now we're not at that. We have not decided to do that. We're going to continue on this current path.
Thanks.
Lily, this is Sean, and Dr. Brown, this is Sean, and forgive me, I have a couple of comments. I saved my board responses for this time period, but I will end with a question, I promise. To Carrie Burke's question about playgrounds, I would make the suggestion that we follow New York State Parks, who has put up signs but has not necessarily blocked the playgrounds. So I would give our community warning and best practice, but I think sort of taping off the playgrounds may not be the best move forward, but again, that's why we're a board, and so I like to hear from my board members as well. I want to remind, hold on, no, I'm not done, Eldred. Give me a second. I want to remind folks, I've been thinking a lot about this as a historian of education, that what we're experiencing right now is not homeschooling, and I say that to great respect to folks who have been practicing homeschooling. It's not distance learning. I have participated in online classes in almost every situation. Those are students who have willingly chosen to participate in online classes. What we're experiencing right now is state disaster emergency education. That is vastly different. Education from its delivery has been nearly identical. Let me repeat that. Education has been nearly identical for 200 years. So for more than 2 centuries, we have had the exact same delivery of instruction. And what we're asked to do now is make changes within a 2-week period. We are going to make some mistakes. It's not going to be a smooth process. I know that our top 3 employers in the county are all educational institutions. So this is having a significant impact at Cornell, at Ithaca College, at the Ithaca City School District, and all other businesses in the community, restaurants, hotels, etc. I say that necessarily to say that as someone who's one of the primary caregivers for our 5-year-old, my pre-K skills in teaching have been brought to the forefront, how severely lacking they are, and my ability to transfer my classes online has been a significant transition. So I greatly appreciate our educational leaders taking the time to be thoughtful in how we make this happen. To answer Stephen's question, I apologize. Yes, and Liz's comment, yes, we are trying to work through union contracts, but my takeaway from the comments were that communication and clarity would be most helpful. The issues of equity are interesting in the way in which they were phrased to us, but let's also not lie to ourselves as a community in that times of crisis will not exacerbate inequality. That is clearly coming to the forefront in terms of access and the ways in which we move forward. I also appreciate that relationships are key. One of my mentors always told me, in fact, many of you know Cal Walker, who told me at one point in time, students don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I have found myself as a faculty member scheduling more than 100 individual meetings in a week to try to make sure I maintain contact with my students. And I mention it to say that absolutely our continued contact is essential. So my point in saying all that is we are going to try to work through this together. I've been amazed by our teachers, by our aides, by our bus drivers, by our food service providers. This has been a pretty significant transition in a short period of time. In fact, this has been an unprecedented transition in a short period of time. And so I'm very thankful for everyone and their patience, their innovation, their creativity, and their thoughtful ideas. So that's my statement. My apologies for the length of it. My question, Lily, you were alluding to it a minute ago about our possible use of teletherapy for our students with special needs. And I'm also interested if you can speak to the inequality of students who may not have access to internet usage and how we're moving forward as a district. And I will now mute myself.
Thank you. Well said. Sean, I have to admit, I wrote down a couple of quotes in relationship to that. I really appreciate it. So in
It was
terms
really good.
of, yeah, great. So in terms of teletherapy, I think it would be great if maybe Mary Grover could speak a little to that, give an overview and what that might look like. And then I'd be happy to speak about internet and accessibility.
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, so Sean, to quote you, this state disaster emergency education, the teletherapy, the telehealth provider categories and the acceptable modalities have become much more flexible, and they're changing every day. We receive a memo with further flexibility embedded in how we can deliver those. So that is an ongoing working group. And we are hoping in the coming weeks to have more details on what that is going to look like in collaboration with our speech, physical therapists, and occupational therapists. There's also additional guidance coming out around group counseling and individual counseling. And in regards to, say, speech, also giving parents the opportunity to accept telehealth or decline it, depending on their comfort zones with privacy, and knowing that because the modalities are less strict right now, of course, if a group of students were on a group speech session, their identities would be known. However, what we're seeing in among other families, some of the initial feedback we're getting is that families are hoping their students can actually interact with their peers and their educators. And so that's at the forefront of their mind rather than concerns around privacy. So we will have more exact details in the coming week. We meet tomorrow to flush out more details with our providers and also schools within the region navigating this.
Thank you, Mary. Appreciate it.
And then in terms of technology, we do know that there are a couple of places where our hotspots actually won't work. And so the conversations that we've had with local companies, actually, frankly, the local internet providers have been most helpful in terms of this. They've been really responsive from a customer service standpoint in terms of lowering fees and things like that. We're in conversation with them and in conversation with our council in order to really nail down the actual next steps in terms of contracts, et cetera. So in the meantime, there are low-tech versions of work that we're providing, but I'm hopeful that we'll get to that next level. Everything's heading in the right direction.
Thank you.
Hi, Lily. This is Nicole. I'm not sure if this is a Lily question or not, but do you know if there's been conversation amongst elementary schools in regards to having conversations with parents about report cards? I know my kids were scheduled to have their report cards a couple of weeks ago, and I bring that up in terms of thinking about schoolwork that's coming home right now and parents having an idea of where their kids are and the areas that they should be focusing on. Second question is in terms of parent resources. With all the digital resources that we're sending home, is there help for parents in terms of how they're supposed to be supporting their students through the work?
Yes, indeed. Thanks for that. Yes, so the report cards right now, some folks were in the process of finalizing these and finishing up assessments for students, and some folks had already sent them home, right? So we were in this really odd cusp because we closed on the 13th and parent-teacher conferences were going to be on the 18th. So we frankly just know that some of our teachers don't have the most accurate data in order to provide that right now. And so what we're doing in terms of combining third and fourth quarter grades or report cards means that that final report card will be going out much closer to the end of the year. But that doesn't mean that teachers aren't going to be communicating with families. As part of our internal staff-based documents, right, there's information about communicating with families so that folks know what to do next with their kiddo. We're also working on ways in which to differentiate the work, so it's not just a one-size-fits-all experience for our kids. We obviously know that we want kids to have access to the general education and curriculum, but we also know that a level of differentiation is appropriate as well, albeit challenging. Much more easily done when you're leveraging technology tools and kids have those individual accounts. And then in terms of your second question, Nicole, shoot, and it just escaped me. I'm so sorry. Could you repeat?
No, I was asking about resources for parents. So as
Right,
Dr. Bradwell brought up in terms of being a professor, but also not being a preschool teacher, me thinking about helping my kids with math and knowing that math is being taught very differently than how they were taught, and also navigating online digital resources. Is there support for parents in terms of how to navigate that whole terrain?
Yes. Thanks. My apologies for making you repeat that. So we have a couple of modes for that. So obviously good old fashioned email if folks have access to email. If folks don't, we're actually converting that tech helpline that we have set up, and Dr. Brown put out information, let's see, on Friday with that helpline. We tweeted it out, put it on Facebook, we put it on our website as well. We'll certainly be putting that out again and actually converting that into a two-prong helpline. So it would be both for technological support and for pedagogical support. So although it wouldn't be, there might not necessarily be someone live on the other end, it's immediately forwarded, and it's actually coming to the folks in my office. So the support staff in my office are then immediately forwarding it on, following up with families, and then forwarding it on to the experts. So that's our thinking moving forward. That was done, there was a call. There's been a lot of criticism about what's happening in New York City. And over the weekend, we were doing some more research, and that was one of the main points that folks were indicating was super important, was to have essentially a helpline. If folks didn't have access to the internet to email, they needed to be able to call a number.
Thank you. One last quick question. Have you all discussed how we're getting resources or schoolwork to families that are co-parenting in two separate households? Are we sending documents to both households? Are we going off of information that's in school tool?
We're really encouraging our working groups to explore lots of possibilities. I think we keep on saying, all right, we have to do what works for a family, right? We need to understand and have a full understanding of folks' circumstances and how their dynamics are functioning, especially right now, which is part of why we're making a lot of phone calls right now, especially this week. So although each working group is going to work through each of those logistics, I think it may be an individual household decision, right? I just got an email yesterday from a family. Their kiddo is much older now. They were one of my first graders years and years ago. And she was just talking about how it was, it's difficult to know what was happening at the other parent's house. And so we recognize that we need to be flexible and ensure that we're communicating with both.
Hi, I have a it's Moira. I have a follow-up question on report cards. So where was the high school in terms of, and middle schools in terms of the delivery of report cards for the third quarter?
Third quarter grades would have been due right about now.
Right.
So knowing that there were a number of outstanding projects, et cetera, you know, we were, like I said, with elementary, we were in this really odd place. And so it seemed to make the most sense, especially in regional conversations, in order to make this move. So we're able to still do some of the differentiated support that we do for our students who may be struggling based on the grades that are currently in our student management system. So we can still pull those and reach out specifically to students and provide additional support as well. So we're trying not to see it as a barrier right now, and trying to move forward.
Well, I guess, what are teachers being told about what they're supposed to do with third quarter grades?
That we're combining third and fourth quarter grades. So there will be essentially a semester grade.
Okay, all right. And then I just have a follow-up, a comment. You know, and people have mentioned this, but I want to just say something more directly about it. That, you know, understanding what folks' circumstances are includes understanding where the teachers are. So we have teachers who are now home with kids with no childcare, and kids who are stressed out and because their own lives have been so disruptive. And we have teachers whose partners have lost jobs, or they themselves were working a second job and they no longer have that income. And so we just need to understand that. So we need to be flexible in dealing with those teachers, and understanding that maybe if your child is not getting the contact from the teacher that you're expecting, there may be circumstances that are behind that it's not just an unwillingness, but at this point it may be an inability to do more.
Thanks for sharing that, Moya.
Exactly. More questions.
If no one else has a question, I have a comment about your question about athletic fields. I have ridden my bike as much as I can, and I will say every time I've gone past Boynton, there are kids playing on that court there, that basketball court, right by the back entrance. And it's close contact. It's usually basketball. It's usually and I don't want to sound inconsiderate, but it's usually a group of Asian kids. I've seen them on soccer fields. But when it comes to the tennis courts, that seems to be the very definition of social distancing. But the folks who are on the tennis court look vastly different than the kids who I see playing basketball. So I'm trying to reconcile what could be perceived as privilege, and obviously trying to protect the community. If there were one athletic circumstance I'd like to see us continue to allow people to access, I guess I'm saying it would be tennis, because the distance is involved. And that's all I have to say about that. If Carrie is still on the line, I have a couple of questions for her. I don't know if she's gone back to be with her family?
I'm here.
All right, Carrie, some questions that don't necessarily affect us, but I'm sure the community is very interested. And as we have you on the line and we have close to 50 people, please indulge me as I ask you just a couple of questions. One about testing. Is there a sense now that we have enough testing in our community and that we can actually get the results back to people in some reasonable time frame?
I don't know that I can say with any confidence that we are doing enough testing. I think there's still constraints that exist in terms of the capacity of labs, whether it's their actual materials, testing materials. The timelines for notification with respect to testing have certainly improved, and they continue to improve, going from weeks now to a matter of days. And increasingly, there are a lot of private companies developing tests that may provide rapid results similar to flu or strep. So although testing capacity continues to increase, I don't know that 1%, that many folks would say 1% is necessarily adequate.
Well, thank you for that. The second question is associated, obviously, contact tracking. I know that even TC3 students and everyone who can lend a hand to the oar have been trying to get involved in contact tracking. Are we doing a good job with that as a community?
I believe we are. And as I mentioned earlier, the health department is enlisting the support of area school nurses and similar personnel. Additionally, it's my understanding that Cayuga Medical Center is taking responsibility for monitoring the folks who have tested positive and are effectively in isolation. So I think the health department's been very thoughtful in their engagement of community partners to assist them with the growing number of persons either in quarantine waiting for test results or those who've tested positive and are now in isolation.
And last question. Thank you for those two. I know the governor sent out a mandate that every community has to try and double, I think at least, their hospital capacity. Has the district been approached by anybody about utilization of our spaces? Or are there other spaces in the community that you're aware of that have been signed up in the event we need something like that?
It's an excellent question. We have not been approached at this time. I'm, as you're aware, a medical director also serves on the Tompkins County Board of Health. And the hospital has demonstrated or found the capacity to add an additional 300 beds if needed. Some of that capacity may actually be made available to downstate hospitals, wherein we would be accepting transfers from downstate hospitals if they couldn't accommodate either patients without COVID-19 who need to be seen for other chronic health concerns, or alternatively hosting patients who are positive for COVID-19. So right as of this time, with one confirmed case hospitalized, and the hospital having identified an additional 300 beds, there haven't, those requests of us as a school district and of a community have not been made as of yet.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Other questions out there? I'll just follow up regarding playing fields and playgrounds with 12 different schools, different sites. It's really, we have fields that are essentially open and are nearly, it would be nearly impossible to fence them off. And so I don't think really we can go that way. Playgrounds, a little more, we could be more restrictive, but I'm with Sean that I think certainly signage is appropriate. I hesitate to put up police tape around playgrounds. Rather not do that. So I think go with the state of New York guidelines, in my opinion. Anything else for Lily, Carrie, et cetera? Very good. Well, thanks, Carrie. Thanks as always for your help, and we appreciate your time. And we'll let you get back to other things. And so let's move on to the budget overview, and we're going to roll that with the vote on the legal notice. We are not going to vote on the legal notice, time, and location of the budget hearing. So part of the budget overview, we probably can touch on that item as well. So we'll move on to that next budget overview item on the agenda.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Ainsley. And I will turn this over to Amanda Berber here shortly. But as a bit of framing, we've shared information with the board in previous meetings. We engage in a year-round budgeting process. We wish for the board and the community to know that we've spent a significant amount of time putting a budget together that's very near completion, that we plan to share additional details about tonight. However, we are very well aware that this is a changing situation daily, and we are looking forward to some new information from our governor about revenue projections and what state aid will look like for us, which will likely result in us making adjustments to what we're going to be sharing with you this evening. We have contingency plans. We don't anticipate the governor's going to come back offering additional state aid. We anticipate that there will be significant cuts to our state aid projections. So we have some contingency plans that we've been thinking about and working on. We will be doing some things in the immediate future for this current school year. But again, going back to, we have put a budget together that we want to share more details about, that includes us finding some efficiencies, but also some new initiatives as well. But also knowing that with new information, as the situation evolves, that we may need to make some significant adjustments. At the forefront of our priorities has been the safety and wellness of our young people. We've talked about that much tonight. Next, after the safety and health of our well-being of our young people, is going to be the instructional program, and making sure that our instructional program is still of high quality, equitable, and inclusive, coupled with a fiscally stable school and organization. We are going to be working very hard to manage our fiscal environment right now with so many unknowns. So I couldn't imagine having a better team and a person in Amanda Berber to help navigate us through this all. And I'll turn it over to Amanda now to talk about our current budget overview and projections, and a continuation of the conversations we've been having with you all for the last several months. Amanda.
Hi, everyone. I just want to make sure you can hear me.
You're there.
Great. Thanks so much. So to date, keeping pace with, if this were the world that we've gotten used to, and it was years prior, at this moment in time, there would have been a number of finance committee meetings that would have met since the closure. We would have had at least 2 board meetings where we would have been able in public to discuss the budget with all the factors that we knew to date. As of right now, we have, as Dr. Brown mentioned, we have a revenue projection and an expenditure / budget for next year. However, I 100% agree, as do my colleagues all across the state, that this is really premature until we sort of know, at least tomorrow, what the governor will be releasing in terms of the state aid runs. As you all know, back in January, we had some projections and some idea of, at that time, what state aid would look like for Ithaca City School District. We know that that's not the majority of our revenue. We know that the majority of our revenue comes from our tax base. However, it is still 25% on a budget that is upwards of $130 million. And so those funds are important in terms of the decisions that we make for our expenditures, and also for leveraging any fund balance that we need to balance the budget when the taxes and the state aid fall short. The governor will release, we hope, on time, some semblance of a budget based on his conversations at the state level and all the proposals that has come his way in this new world tomorrow. So we are one day shy of receiving quality and sort of hopefully some sort of definitive information around state aid amounts. Unfortunately, just last week, the governor shared with the community in New York State, business officials perked their ears up specifically, because he essentially said that no one would be held harmless from this pandemic, and that our budgets, school districts included, would not be held harmless from this, and that he could not do anything to save us, essentially. We're all giving, our neighbors are giving, our community members are giving. There's tremendous loss, and that does impact the revenue at the state level, and that will then trickle down and impact school districts. What he mentioned at that time last week was that aid amounts would most likely be projections and just that, and they would be adjusted quarterly, so that school district would be working on a rolling throughout the year, 4 times a year, readjustment of the state aid that would be coming our way. So given just that one factor alone, it would actually not be good practice for us to move forward our recommendations in terms of the budget, not knowing what that 25% of our revenue amount will be. Once we find that out tomorrow, we will repopulate spreadsheets. We will, do the deep dive of sort of the expenditures, looking at where the gaps are and recalculating and figuring what is that, of the priorities that Dr. Brown mentioned that we know are sort of the must-haves. What are the things that we would love to have? What are the things that are mandates? What are the things that are funded mandates? And come together as a team like we have been doing all throughout the year. But this will sort of be sort of in superpower mode, right? So we're trying to get this together. We did get a little bit of breathing room, as was mentioned already from the governor, that the budget vote and the board elections would not happen in May. They would be pushed forward to at least June 1st. That gives us a couple extra weeks to have more meetings. You always have been wonderful about trying to get more committee meetings scheduled if necessary. We will probably need those so that we know, as the factors come into play, how to plan for them and really have that intentional dialogue around all of the recommendations that our budget developers have given us, and going back to them, sort of calibrating, giving them the information, having that interplay between their thoughts and ideas coming back to us to go into the budget document for that decision making. So that's the revenue side of things. The other piece we also are focused on is the taxes. We are well aware that I think Rob mentioned it in a conversation earlier that the assessments are done. We sort of know what those will look like. We'll know what the levy amount is because that calculation is done and submitted to the state. Those factors in terms of the levy and the rate don't change very much in a couple of months, but we do know that the impact of the rate that it has on our community members who now potentially are laid off or who have lost jobs or who are looking at a new way of life in a different world. We know now that we have to be more than ever mindful of what those rates mean. And so, we want to make sure that whatever levy amount that we choose to balance the budget, we're talking about and very forthright about what does that mean to the taxpayer. Dr. Brown, also, I'm not going to really go much further in terms of the expenditures. That is done in collaboration. That's not done in a vacuum. That's not done at a computer with a spreadsheet open. That is done with tremendous participation. And so we will be using the next couple of weeks, once we know those revenue amounts, to drive that forward.
Thank you, Ms. Lozano. Question from the board at this point?
I have a question which I don't know if any of us can answer. It's just a thought based on what you said, Amanda, about the governor's thinking. I remember after 2008, there was a lot of us who did not feel that the pain was shared fairly, as the governor seemed to penalize school districts like ours who had done the right thing with our money and had been trying to serve the community by putting the money where it belonged in our restricted and unrestricted funds. Do you have any sense of whether or not this next fix, which we know is going to have to cut much deeper, is possibly going to be done on the backs, again, of school districts who are trying to do the right thing?
Not at this time.
I'll just ask if you have a sense of that, if you or Dr. Brown, if you guys get a sense of that in your communications with your peers.
Yeah.
Just, I don't even know what to say. Just keep us in the loop. We are still all stinging from that last time go around. Thank you.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Harris. Both Amanda and I are very active in our respective associations. And we get daily updates on this and many other topics. So as we learn or hear any potential shifts from the state, from the state, we will be letting our board know and engaging in those conversations.
This is Ann. Oh, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead. Go ahead.
Just a question for Amanda. Something that you said about how the state will re-examine state aid quarterly next year. I'm trying to get my head around how that actually will work at all for school districts that have to plan a full year ahead. So what's the thinking at this time about how one manages that kind of approach from the state?
Well, Amanda, I can take a quick shot. Again, we still don't know exactly how that will be rolled out. And that quarterly projection, we could know what that would look like early on. So we could plan for what a very conservative approach or a worst case scenario based on those quarterly projections. From my understanding, that's how it would be rolled out. This is what we think it will look like in the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and fourth quarter. So we would know what would be coming, and it would be up to us as a governance team to plan for that worst case or best case scenario. But again, it's still rather hypothetical. Amanda, would you add or say anything differently to that?
Dr. Brown, I agree with you, and I feel like we've really done a great job in the last couple of years of lining up the tools and the right people to be able to do this work, right? So this is about transparency. This is about creating maybe monthly dashboards. This is about tracking and as we've always tried to do, to be transparent to the community. So coupling that with, what Dr. Brown said, one, it's too soon to tell. And then two, we'll just be ready with good quality, transparent budget projections, so that we can track our expenditures in live time.
Thanks. It definitely seems like that's going to present some challenges for sure. But yeah, I think transparency and updating and things like that will be a good approach for starts. Yeah, definitely. It definitely going to be a challenge. So.
Yeah.
Amanda, have you gotten any idea, or certainly Ann on the advocacy side at Albany level, do they really believe they can create a budget in April and pass it in April? That seems like a challenge in itself. They're not sure what the federal government is going to do to step in with aid to states and what that will look like. It's not, the New York State budget didn't used to be passed and sometimes until August. So, lately it's always been passed in April, but it's not always a guarantee.
Rob, yes, I like you, well, I'm sure like many, every day I try to tune in to Governor Cuomo's update, and I listen, mainly because I'm concerned about my community, So there's that one sort of lens, and then there's the business official lens. And so every time there's some sort of nugget, I pretty much know about as much as everybody that's watching that that play out. Dr. Brown, I don't know if you have any further information.
No, nothing new.
So we'll know tomorrow, Rob.
There you go. Can I just, we'll just voting, well, just regarding the time and location and budget hearing, et cetera, you know, backing up from perhaps June 1st, when we were going to vote tonight on that, when would we vote on that? When would we have to look to do some of those processes that we are by law supposed to do by a certain date? So is it just adding a few weeks onto it, or we're still gonna?
Maybe that's probably a question for Kate, Amanda, unless you've already spoken to Kate. I have an answer for that.
No, so actually that my answer is that, as you all know, this has all come to us in just the past couple of days. So many times these orders, these executive orders or these announcements are made, and the units in Albany and our groups have yet to vet them and give us sort of the how-tos, right? They're more of the mission statements versus and here's how you're going to get there. So to my knowledge, based on my last conversation with Kate, which we're having sometimes every other hour, it feels, there is no prescription in terms of the details. Right now, it's just sort of the announcement.
Right. Right. Other questions, comments for Amanda, Dr. Brown? I'm not hearing any. Go ahead.
I would just add one thing, that Kate is our district attorney. So when folks hear us talk about Kate, they know who we're talking about. Kate is our attorney from BS&K.
And she has been and will in the future be very helpful to us figuring out all these various issues before us. And speaking of
Rob,
Kate, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Rob. This is Pat, and I just did want to just chime in and thank Amanda and Dr. Brown and Kate Reed for the work they're doing. When Amanda says that we have the right people lined up to do this work, I think that we have the best team available of any district that I know or I've heard of, and that is really something. As Amanda said, this is coming at us daily. It's unprecedented, it's national, it's global. You know, it's not our little district. Everyone is facing this, and everyone's going through this, and it's changing so rapidly. You know, could we have known 3 months or 2 months or 1 month ago that we would be where we are today? And that's, you know, all we can do is go forward. So thank you, Amanda and Dr. Brown and Kate and all the exec team and the teachers for doing what you can the best way that you can.
Thank you.
I just want to add, I just want to respond to Sean's comments, Sean's eminently quotable comments about the fact that education has not changed. In fact, the reason I'm so appreciative that we took the time, that we're taking the time to think thoroughly about and responsibly about this distance learning project is because I'd argue we actually have changed education, right? That's what the curriculum committee was up to. We've seen our teachers not just delivering academic content, but doing it in the context of social emotional learning, our anti-marginalization curriculum, project-based learning. The kids were no longer sitting in those rows, right? We've changed virtually everything that somebody would think about when they looked at education 20, 10, even 5 years ago. So replicating that the way we're trying to do it through a distance platform I have to echo what Pat just said. I'm glad that I have this team led by Dr. Brown trying to get us there. Thank you. That's it. Muted again.
Thanks, Eldred. Thanks, Pat. Well said. And if there's nothing else for Amanda on this subject, I would just go on to the next. And well, speaking of Kate Reed and Sean, I'll bring you in. But there's a resolution for the academic calendar, and it has to do with the 180-day rule. And I'll let Sean, if you want to speak to it, and certainly we can bring in those who can explain why we need to do this tonight.
And Lily or Dr. Brown, please feel free to speak to this as well. My understanding is that the governor has provided some relax of the 180-day requirement for schools. With that being said, it does not absolve us of our obligation for days of instruction. And so there was a very vague executive order that was released on March 27th, discussing that school districts need to use all snow days, vacation days, and other break days to maintain the days of instruction in order to comply with and receive state aid. And so I'll pause there for a minute if Lily or Dr. Brown have anything to add, or Amanda, who's probably been very involved in this as well.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. You said it very well. This is something that is rather it's mandated by our governor with this most recent executive order. We will need to adjust our academic calendar to have young people receive some instruction doing what we had previously scheduled as a spring break. And you know, that's, give all due respect to the educators and families who were looking for that spring break, but I'm hoping they will be understanding and appreciative of the moves that we're needing to make because of what's happened in our school district.
Yes, and I will follow up with Dr. Brown that this is not an ICSD resolution. This is a state mandate from Governor Cuomo's office. And all we are doing is providing a record to make sure that we can receive the state aid when the time comes that we are in compliance with the executive order.
One of many executive orders that we are dealing with, but the only one for tonight.
That's correct.
So Sean, I'll need a motion, obviously, and second, and then any questions from there.
I move agenda item 9.3, the resolution to alter our academic calendar.
I'll second that. This is Pat.
Thank you, Pat. Move seconded. Other questions from the group? Not hearing any. I vote yes.
This is Chris. I vote yes.
This is Pat. I vote yes.
This is Moira. I vote yes.
Erin
This is
Croyle
Ann.
votes yes.
Anne, I vote yes.
Eldred, I vote yes.
Sean, I vote yes.
We got that and that time, Sean, right? Is there any, there's no one else, right?
Nicole, I vote yes.
Oh, geez, Nicole. All right, gosh. I can't keep track. I need to see faces. This is strange, but
True indeed. Rob, in next meeting we'll do an alphabetical order so we all know which way to proceed. We'll keep changing our process.
Don't I go first then too? So right, okay. Everybody else has to change.
Indeed.
We'll figure this out. It's interesting times in which we live. So thank you for that. So we actually did 2 votes tonight. Do want to point out this is a legal voting meeting. And Sean, if you want to just touch base on that a little bit, you know, why this is legal and using Zoom allows us to do a few different things, if you could.
Yep, appreciate it, Rob. Thank you. Another executive order, as Rob has alluded to, there's been any number of them. You can check Governor Cuomo's page for all the executive orders. Has been a change to the open meetings law, which allows school districts and other governmental agencies to host virtual meetings. Once we do host virtual meetings, there are two requirements. One, to make sure the meeting is available in real time for folks to access. Second of all is to provide a recording and a transcript of the meeting. And we'll be doing both. We'll be hosting them on our website and putting it out to the greater community. And so what you're seeing is us trying out new technology to hold a official board meeting, including votes. The last agenda item we already spoke to, which is the legal notice and time of the budget hearing, which we will not be holding tonight, as was already alluded to for folks, given that another executive order by Governor Cuomo has postponed the budget vote and any school board elections until at least June 1st. Speaking personally, I anticipate that would probably be extended, but at this point in time, we are not, as a community, going to be voting on our school budget or any school board elections until at least June 1st. Rob, if there's anything else you'd like me to add, please let me know. Mr. Board President, are you still there?
Yes, I am. I am here. I muted myself. So no, I appreciate that, Sean. Is why I suggested we go through that. I knew you had the details and appreciated going through the final school district business item for tonight. There is other business, and I would just ask that we spend just a couple of minutes regarding our committees and restarting the meeting thereof. And those as well will have to do in a manner that is distant, correct, Sean?
That is correct. For any and all committee chairs, we'll be working with Tricia to restart what a calendar could look like to the community. Our committees are also a part of open meetings law, which means they will be stated and advertised in advance. The agendas will be posted using our board docs and various email listservs, and they will be hosted via Zoom, which any and all committee member or community members have access to attend. We have changed the name of our committee structure and committee meetings to work sessions. And I say that in essence to say that the vast majority of our work happens via our committee structure. So similar to what Mr. Harris was talking about, the Curriculum and Instruction Committee, we'll be having a great deal of conversation about distance learning 2.0 in that committee. When we're talking about our budget for the upcoming year, the vast majority of that conversation will happen in our finance. We did not have a conversation this evening, but to let the committee know or the community know that we'll be having conversations about our community project that will happen in our facilities meeting, and we'll be having much more information available. And so you can find our committee structure on our website. And again, we'll work with our board clerk to make sure that all committee agendas are advertised and posted in advance. And we'll be using our committee structure to do the vast majority of our work using Zoom as a platform.
And certainly that will, we will be meeting remotely throughout April. And it's really, to make the point, it's not up to the Washington when we open our schools. It's public education is a state function, and it's up to New York State, it's up to the governor for when we get back to it and when we can open up the schools again. So it is going to be much more of a local decision. And so we will be obviously working with our team and the governor's office in Albany and trying to figure out the next steps. It is truly a unique spring, but I certainly hope that in the not too distant future that we can meet face-to-face in one room and be able to have a more interactive meeting with everyone in the group, but look forward to that day, whenever that day comes. Anything else, Sean? Anything else? Anyone else on the call at this point?
Just want to say shout out to my colleagues, and I imagine there's going to be quite a bit of work for legislative advocacy to do, and Sean's not off the hook. You and Maura and Pat, I can only imagine the policies that are going to be necessitated by this shift in the world. So our structure has been sound. I'm looking forward to getting back to it and trying to make the best out of this circumstance and seeing if we can shift education even more to the benefit of kids. Thank you.
Thanks, Eldred. But it is that interaction between the board members and the exec team and the public, in a room together has been and will be tremendously helpful to make this district work and make it great. But we're going to do it a little more remotely for a little while. But and if there's no other comments for tonight, Dr. Brown, do you have anything else you want to say tonight?
No, sir, I do not. Thank you.
So, very good.
Rob,
Again, Dr. Brown, great to see you. Sean, go ahead.
Similar to you, I would just add, Dr. Brown, we're sending continued support to you and your family and to our Ithaca community. I think as a number of our college presidents and Dr. Brown has stated, it has been inspiring to see the offers of support, creativity, and generosity. And so we're going to push on this path forward together. And I greatly appreciate all the offers of generosity that we've seen in our community.
Thank you, Sean. Well said. If there's no one else, we're pretty much right at that time that we usually wrap up. I appreciate everyone's time tonight. Those who are still listening or tuning in outside our group, thanks for hanging in there. And everyone, we'll talk soon and hopefully see you soon. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everyone. Be well.
Good night.
Bye.